G'day everybody, my name is Lowell and welcome to the channel. So we have a reaction video. Now we've done weirdest things about America, we've done all this other things. We're going to do 50 insane US geography facts that seem fake, but they're not. So let's jump in, let's have a look at this one.
The United States is a land of mind-blowing landscapes, extreme geography, and natural oddities that seem too wild to be true. From purple mountain majesties to jaw-dropping natural wonders, it's a country full of surprises. But did you know the world's smallest river is in the US? Or that there's a mountain technically higher than Everest? And that's just the beginning.
I think that's a Hawaiian mountain? From the actual, they measure it from the actual base to the top. I'm pretty sure I heard that was a Hawaiian mountain. I don't know the name of it, but I'm pretty sure.
There's so much to come on today's episode of The Infographic Show.
Okay.
50 geography facts that seem fake but are 100% real.
All right.
Fact 50. Alaska is the northernmost, westernmost, and easternmost state in the U.S. This isn't a confirmation
Pretty
that Alaska
straightforward,
is
yep.
a mirage existing outside of known space and time. Instead, it's a neat little trick of geography. Alaska being the northernmost state seems straightforward. Point Barrow is the northernmost point in the U.S. The Alaskan Aleutian Islands extend west past the 180-degree line of longitude, meaning they extend into the eastern hemisphere. So while the westernmost point in the U.S. is Amatignac Island, the easternmost point is Semisopochnoi Island, an Alaskan island located in the same hemisphere as Asia.
Yep.
Fact 49.
Now, we did a video on Alaska. Make sure you can definitely go check that out too. I'll link it in the description.
Mauna Kea is actually taller than Mount Everest.
Oh, that's what it's called.
Mount Everest
Okay.
is the tallest mountain in the world as measured from sea level to
Yes.
peak, adding up to just over 29,000 feet, way past any point where humans can comfortably breathe. Though Mauna Kea doesn't rise as high above the sea, it's actually the tallest mountain in the world as measured from base to peak. The difference being its base sits way below sea level. The total height of Mauna Kea adds up to almost 33,500 feet. However, around 13,800 feet of the mountain rise is above sea level. That still puts the mountain's altitude closer to that of California's Mount Whitney, part of another unbelievable U.S. geography fact. In fact, Mauna Kea is so tall that even though it's located in the tropical state of Hawaii, the temperature at the summit averages 32 degrees Fahrenheit during the year. Fact 48.
Yikes.
The highest and lowest points in the contiguous U.S. are only miles apart. Speaking of Mount Whitney, it is the highest point in the contiguous U.S. at around 14,500 feet high. It's located in California, a state famous for its astonishing diversity of landscapes, which gives Mount Whitney another strange distinction. Death Valley, the lowest point in not only the U.S. but all of North America, dips almost 280 feet below sea level. And the lowest and highest points on the main U.S. landmass.
What? U.S. I thought Denali was the tallest in America. Okay.
Are only 85 miles apart from each other on the map. Well, 133 miles if you're driving, but that still means driving from one to the other will take just over 2 hours. However, to be clear, you cannot drive up to the top of Mount Whitney. Have fun hiking. Fact 47. Houston is slowly sinking. Houston, known for barbecue, the NASA Space Center, and, well, being very, very large, Texas's biggest city has a lot going for it. It also has the distinction of being the fastest sinking city in the U.S. and the 10th fastest sinking city in the world.
Wow.
Okay, that's probably not an honor Houston wants, but unfortunately it is true. The problem with Houston is that it's growing too fast. Groundwater has been pumped out of underground aquifers at a rapid rate, and that leads to the sediment the city sits on compacting and also being less able to hold water. Thus, Houston is sinking at a rate of almost 0.8 inches per year, though there are neighborhoods sinking up to 2 inches every year. The process is irreversible, but new regulations have slowed the city's sinking for now. But it's still going down, and sea levels are also rising, so the future doesn't look too bright.
Yikes.
Fact 46. Route 20 is the longest highway. Less iconic and well-known than highways like Route 66, Route 20 connects Boston to Newport, Oregon, making it the longest highway in the country. In 1989, the Federal Highway Administration officially recorded the route's length as just under 3,400 miles. Due to highway adjustments over time, it may be slightly shorter today. One source, the Historic Route 20 Association, they would be the ones to know, calculated today.
I've never heard of Route 20. 66, yeah, everybody knows that. get your kicks on 66, but I've never heard of Route 20.
Today's route length as around 3,350 miles. Though longer highways have existed in the U.S. in the past, like the Lincoln Highway and US 6, they have either been decommissioned as highways or
Never
parts
heard
of them have been
either.
replaced by other routes. Route 20 still fully exists today. Fact 45, the Grand Canyon has 2 rock layers formed over 1 billion years apart. An unconformity is a missing chunk of time in a rock record. For example, a time when, for whatever reason, either no rock layer was formed or whatever was formed completely eroded or vanished. The Grand Canyon has one of the most startling gaps in the rock record, known as the Great Unconformity, where Paleozoic rock lie over Vishnu basement rocks. For the 99.9% of us who have no idea what that means, if you placed your hand on the division between these layers, you would be touching 2 rocks formed 1.2 billion years apart, missing 30% of Earth's entire history in between. Scientists have theories as to what caused it, from erosion to the breakup of a supercontinent, but there's no definite explanation. Fact 44, the U.S. is...
That's an interesting fact. I might have to have a look more at that. The difference between 1.2 billion, that's a lot of time. Interesting.
Biggest ranch is bigger than Rhode Island. Located in southeastern Texas, King Ranch spreads over 825,000 acres of land. A big chunk of it was originally bought in 1853 by Richard King, a steamboat captain, and then his heirs expanded it over time. Rhode Island covers an area of 668,000 acres, or 1,045 square miles. It may be the smallest state in the Union, but the fact that a private ranch is bigger than an entire state is still pretty mind-blowing. Fact 43. Over 40 buildings in New York City have their own zip code. It's no surprise, New York City is one of the most densely populated places in the United States. But did you know there are so many people in the city that over 40 buildings now have their own zip code? These include historic buildings and massive business centers like the Empire State Building.
I guess that would make sense if you've got so many people living there. Our zip codes, postcodes in Australia, we do whole suburbs, maybe even 2 or 3 together. You know, we obviously don't have as many people, but yeah, I've never seen the buildings, individual buildings have their own zip code. That's interesting, but you can understand why.
The Chrysler Building, MetLife Building, and 2 Penn Plaza. There is some disagreement over how many buildings have their own zip code. Estimates range from 41 to 43, but it appears if you count 2 of New York City's major airports that also have their own zip code, JFK and LaGuardia, the total is 43. Fact 42. The whole world's population could fit into Texas. Of course, they would have to be packed in pretty tight, but not as tight as you might think. This would only work if everyone on Earth agreed to live at a population density of 31,000 people per square mile. That sounds impossibly crowded, right?
Yep.
New York City has a population density of 29,303 people.
Wow, New York is populated. Dang, I didn't know it was that densely populated. Dang.
Per square mile. You just have to build everything upwards. But perhaps you're looking for somewhere with a bit more space. Fact 41. Wyoming is the least populated state in the U.S.
Knew that.
That might sound insane, especially considering how massive Wyoming is in terms of actual area compared to other states. How could tiny little states like Rhode Island and Delaware have a bigger population than Wyoming? But thanks to a combination of factors, including challenging geography, limited water supply, and a harsh climate, Wyoming has always been sparsely populated.
I've done a reaction video to Wyoming, 10 best places in Wyoming. The cowboy state, they call it. Man, it looks amazing. The scenery is breathtaking. But again, a lot of people were saying in the comments in that video, very windy, very harsh winters, but isolation. I kind of like that. I kind of like that beauty of that isolation, that ruggedness as well. Okay.
That hasn't changed much over the years. Though the state covers a land area of just over 97,000 square miles, only 584,000 people live within its borders. That's fewer people than live in Memphis, Tennessee, at around 618,000. Fact 40. Alaska has the longest U.S. coastline. You might not have guessed it, but Alaska actually has the longest coastline of any U.S. state. That's usually because when people think of the coast, they think of states like Florida and California, since it turns out people prefer to surf and swim off the coast of Miami and San Diego rather than Juneau. But it makes sense if you look at a map
Yeah.
and then realize Alaska is the largest state by far, with an area of over 665,000 square miles, and it's also a peninsula surrounded by water on 3 sides. The coastline measures almost 6,600 miles, and it's bordered by both the Pacific and Arctic Oceans. Fact 39. The world's
Too cold.
shortest river is in the U.S. The
Okay.
Roe River was recognized by Guinness as the world's shortest river. It's located near Great Falls, Montana, and it measures about 200 feet long. It flows between Giant Springs and the Missouri River. The Roe River is a great place for locals to camp, fish, and just relax, as it's created by springs so it never freezes over, and the water stays around 54 degrees Fahrenheit all year long.
Wow.
Fact 38. You can walk from Alaska to Russia. When the Bering Strait freezes over in the winter, people can technically walk between Alaska and Russia. That walk will start from Little Diomede Island in Alaska, nicknamed Yesterday Island, and end up in Big Diomede Island in Russia, nicknamed Tomorrow Island. Well, that's because while walking, you would also cross the international date line and jump one day into the future. The reverse walk is even cooler, as you could enter the US and factually tell people that you've arrived from the future. The distance between the 2 landmasses is only 2.4 miles. However, walking this route is not highly recommended. First of all, both countries might disapprove of people just walking in with no security or passport checks.
I don't know if I'd want to walk 2 miles over open ocean, even if it is frozen. No.
And also,
No.
a miscalculation on the ice might result in a very sudden, very cold death. Fact 37. Manawi, Nebraska has only 1 resident. Elsie Eiler, born in 1935, is the sole resident of Manawi, Nebraska. In fact, the only reason the town still exists is because she files the paperwork to keep it alive year after year.
Oh.
As you might imagine, Elsie wears multiple hats to keep Manawi running. She opens and runs her own personal business, the local tavern, 6 days a week. She's also the town mayor, tax collector, and most other jobs you could think of to keep a town going.
I guess tourism is the only thing probably keeping it open. Okay. All right.
Fact 36. A chunk of Africa is stuck under the U.S. When Pangaea broke apart 250 million years ago, the different land masses, like most celebrity relationships, didn't exactly have a clean break. Scientists have found that a small piece of the African continent got stuck under the sea, bordering the southeastern states, right off the coast of Alabama. Fact 35. The 4
I wonder how, I guess, having a look at the rock and, obviously maybe it might not be native to over there, but yeah, it's strange. I'd like to see what kind of process they went to discover that. Interesting.
largest U.S. cities are in Alaska. Now, to be clear, we're talking about large cities in terms of area.
Not
Alaska,
populated,
as you might imagine, isn't all that densely populated, but at least 4 of their cities make up for it by sprawling all over the place. Sitka, Juneau, Anchorage, and Wrangell rank as the 4 largest cities in terms of area in the U.S.
Dang.
So why did these cities with relatively small populations end up being so expansive?
Yeah.
Why does Sitka, with a population of just under 8,500, spread out to nearly 2,900 square miles, making it the
Why?
largest U.S. city by area and 1.5 times larger than all of Delaware? According to locals, because so much of Alaska is relatively empty, it helps eliminate extra bureaucracy to just incorporate a lot of the spread out land around towns into the cities themselves. But that is hardly the only weird fact about Alaska.
Okay.
Fact 34. The state with the most earthquakes is
Alaska.
When people think of U.S. states rattled by earthquakes, their minds tend to go to states like California, thanks in no small part to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's PSA film San Andreas. However, Alaska beats California by a wide margin, experiencing over 19,000 earthquakes in 2024, while California only had a measly 9,500.
I mean, 9,500 earthquakes is crazy, but 19,000 is crazy. I have actually been through an earthquake. I was actually live streaming a gaming stream a couple of months ago now. But the only thing it did was really shook my table, and it's just like, what the hell was that? But I can't imagine going through 19,000 of them. Obviously, they're not going to hit you all the time, but I guess after a while, you kind of get used to it. It's just like, whatever. I guess it's the same. You get used to anything. But yeah, that's a lot of earthquakes. 19,000. Dang.
That being said,
Okay.
California has a drastically higher population density, so more of its population actually experiences the
Yeah.
earthquakes every year. After all, if an earthquake happens in the Alaskan forest and no one's around to see it, did the
Did
earth
that
even
happen?
move? Or something like that? Fact 33. Alaska is closer to Hawaii than California. At this point, let's
Oh,
just
yeah?
agree Alaska's a really weird geographical
Yeah,
phenomenon.
most of these seem to be Alaska. What?
phenomenon as a state. Even though strictly based on an average map, it seems like this fact should be fake. It is not. As we'll learn later in the video, our mental maps of places are often deceiving. People think of Hawaii as being composed of only its major islands, but in fact it has tiny islands and atolls all over the Pacific Ocean. The Hawaiian island Kure Atoll is just under 1,600 miles from Amatignak Island in Alaska. Even just using the main islands, the distance between Kauai and Alaska's Samalga Islands is around 2,200 miles. Meanwhile, the distance between Maui and Point Arena near San Francisco is close to 2,300 miles. Fact 32. The closest state to Africa is Maine. Speaking of deceiving mental maps, most people guess that a southeastern state like Florida would be the closest to Africa. But because the U.S. East Coast slopes in a northeasterly direction way more than most people assume, the closest state to Africa as the crow flies is Maine. That's also why Africa is actually closer to Canada than it is to the U.S. We'll wait while you quickly open Google Maps and
that's weird, isn't it? But I mean, I guess Nova Scotia and Newfoundland kind of come out that way, don't they, for Canada?
tab to stop your brain from screaming at you that this can't be. Fact 31. Anchorage is only 10 hours from nearly all major global markets. And Alaska's back on our countdown with more insane facts. Companies like FedEx have chosen Anchorage, Alaska as a major global hub because that city is just a 10-hour flight from almost every major global market in North America, Europe, and Asia.
Dang.
You may not think of Anchorage as
Okay.
being particularly close to, say, New Delhi, but thanks to its northern latitude, planes fly right over
Yep.
the Arctic Circle and they drop down into the Asian continent on the other side, minimizing the distance as they don't have to go around the wider parts of the Earth. Fact 30.
Yep.
There are 6 state capitals west of Los Angeles. Juneau and Honolulu definitely lie west of Los Angeles, but what are the 4 others? Well, since the Pacific coast slopes inward as you travel south, LA is actually further east than most people realize.
Okay.
Salem, Oregon, Olympia, Washington, Sacramento, California, and Carson City, Nevada are all located west of LA. Fact 29. Tampa, Florida is west of all of South America. With the exception of the Galapagos Islands, the entire landmass of South America is located east of Florida. Most people think of South America as directly south of North America, forgetting that it actually juts out into the Atlantic Ocean. So much so that Sao Paulo, Brazil is a full 2 hours ahead of Miami. Fact 28. Portland, Oregon is north of Portland, Maine. The west coastline reaches a much higher latitude than the east coast of the U.S., which is why Portland, Maine is located at 43 degrees 40 minutes latitude, and Portland, Oregon is located at 45 degrees 30 minutes latitude. Fact 27. Parts of California are further north than parts of Canada. Few people associate the icy forests of Canada with the sunny beaches of California, but it turns out the country and the state are not as far from each other in some ways as one might think. Specifically, Canada's Point Pelee National Park is at 41.95 degrees north, while the northern border of California sits at 42 degrees latitude. It's a small overlap, but still a surprising one.
Dang.
Fact 26. 2nd Street is the most common name in the U.S.
Yeah.
Well, what happened to all the first streets?
Yeah, what happened
well,
to
a
the
lot
first
of them
street?
got renamed
A
main
main
streets
street,
or
yeah.
whatever else the most important
Okay.
street of a town happens to go by.
The town I grew up in had a main street as well, but we don't really use numbers as much as America. But yeah, we definitely had a main street though.
For example, in Philadelphia, the main street is called Front Street since it was once on the riverfront.
front?
So why isn't Main Street the most common street name in the U.S.? Because first streets only got renamed main streets when the town or city becomes big or important enough to do so. Sometimes towns chose not to change the name altogether. That still means there's a split between main
Yeah.
streets and first streets in the U.S., but Second Street is
Street.
much more consistent, and a lot of towns simply aren't large enough to have a third street. So that name dips in popularity as well. We're only halfway
Dang,
through, and
okay.
the U.S. is already proving to be a geography goldmine. What's the most mind-blowing geography fact so far? Drop it in the comments below. Fact 25. Almost half of the U.S. lives in the Eastern Time Zone. The contiguous U.S. spans 4 time zones, but when you include Alaska, Hawaii, and U.S. territories, that number jumps to 9. Yet despite all those zones, nearly half of the U.S. population,
Dang.
around 156 million people, live in just one, the Eastern Time
That's a lot of people living on that side of the country.
Zone.
Dang, okay.
The eastern seaboard is one of the most densely populated regions in the country. Its flat, fertile land made early settlement easier compared to the rugged landscapes of the west and the southwest. Over time, it developed into an economic powerhouse, home to major cities and ports trading with Europe, Africa, and South America. The time zone includes major cities like New York, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Boston, Jacksonville, Charlotte, and Miami.
Be interesting to see what would happen if America was populated by obviously explorers the other way around, like they came in from the west. How much different the America would have been, because obviously they're saying that, you know, it's obviously a lot easier on the east side of the country. Interesting.
Fact 24.
Okay.
LA to El Paso is a shorter drive than El Paso to Texarkana. Everything's bigger in Texas, including Texas itself. As one of the most massive states in the Union, in fact, the second largest after Alaska, Texas is a monster of a state to drive through. That's why the distance from LA to El Paso, nearly 700 miles, flying, 800 miles driving, is actually shorter than the distance from El Paso to Texarkana, located on the opposite point of the state, around 730 miles by air, 810 miles on the road.
The state I live in, Queensland, is actually twice the size of Texas. So you can imagine how big our state is.
Fact 23. Point
Queensland.
Roberts is separated from the U.S. by Canada. There's
Hey?
something weird about Point Roberts in Washington state, namely that unless you have a boat, you can't get there without driving through Canada first.
Huh?
Point Roberts is located on a peninsula jutting out south of Canada into
So you got to drive up into Canada. That's weird.
Boundary Bay and the Strait of Georgia. Canada and the U.S. had once agreed that in the west their border would be determined by the 49th parallel. However,
Dang.
Point Roberts found itself a little bit south of that, an oversight that no one got around to correcting.
Yikes.
Fact 22. Reno is further west than L.A. Even though Nevada is located on California's eastern border, Reno, Nevada is actually further west than the city of Los Angeles. Since the state of California turns inwards the further south you go, Reno actually ends up being 86 miles west of Los Angeles. Fact 21. The Appalachians were once connected to the Scottish Highlands. Not only the Scottish Highlands, but also Little Atlas and Morocco were once a part of the same mountain chain as the Appalachians. When Pangaea was still one massive continent, these mountains were connected to each other, part of a huge range called the Central Pangaean Mountains. When the supercontinent broke
Probably why a lot of Scots settled in that area too. Okay.
apart, each part of the mountain range drifted off into its current-day corner of the world. Fact 20.
Wow.
The Grand Canyon is not the U.S.'s deepest canyon. For all its
wait,
fame
what?
and the millions of tourists that visit it annually, the Grand
not?
Canyon isn't actually the deepest canyon in the U.S. It's still arguably the most impressive, as it stretches for miles and is actually bigger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Perhaps the underlying
Poor Rhode Island's getting thrown under the bus every time.
theme of this video should just be that Rhode Island is actually way smaller than we think. However, the deepest canyon in the U.S. is actually Hell's Canyon, with an average depth of about 5,300 feet. But the canyon stretches to over 8,000 feet deep in some places. Meanwhile, the Grand Canyon averages a depth of around 4,000 feet and expands to about 6,000 feet deep.
Where the hell is Hell's Canyon? I've never even heard of that before.
At its lowest point. Fact 19. Hawaii is growing. While other parts of the country are shrinking thanks to erosion and rising sea levels, Hawaii decides to go the opposite way and expand instead. The big island of Hawaii, already the biggest island in the U.S. and the youngest of the Hawaiian archipelago, is growing thanks to frequent volcanic activity. Eruptions send lava flows tumbling into the ocean that then harden into new land. From 1983 to 2018 alone, these flows added more than 570 acres of land to Hawaii.
Dang.
Fact 18.
Now, can you use that land though? You know, there's no point in having, you know, thousands of extra acres if you can't use it. But, okay.
Water in Devil's Hole gets disturbed by earthquakes around the world. Located in a detached part of Death Valley National Park, Ash Meadows in Nevada, you'll find a strange slit in the ground filled with water called Devil's Hole. Scientists have been puzzled by it for decades because of one weird phenomenon. The the water in it gets shaken by earthquakes around the world. We don't mean earthquakes in neighboring California. Earthquakes taking place in Chile, even as far as Indonesia and Japan, have made the water in Devil's Hole splash around as high as 6 feet up.
So, how deep is Devil's Hole? Does that go out to the ocean? Is that why it's getting shaky? That's interesting. Or is it sitting right on the fault line?
The wall. Fact 17. The furthest eastern and western points of U.S. territories have the same name. The westernmost point in the U.S. territories is Point Udall in Guam, while the easternmost point in the U.S. territories is Point Udall in the Virgin Islands, St. Croix. The one in St. Croix is named after the former U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Stuart Udall, one of the founders of the modern environmental movement. Point Udall in Guam is named after his brother, Morris Udall, an Arizona congressman and fellow supporter of environmental protection. Fact 16.
Damn.
Los Angeles and San Francisco will one day be neighbors. The San Andreas Fault is consuming around 2 inches per year thanks to tectonic activity. That means the northern and southern parts of California are ever so slowly moving closer to each other. So in 15 million years, scientists predict that Los Angeles and San Francisco will be next to each other.
Yeah, I'll put that on my calendar, in 15 million years to have a look.
Of course, everyone who lives there will probably have melted or been destroyed in some apocalyptic event long before that, but still a cool fact. Fact 15. You can experience 2 time changes in a row when driving through Arizona. Some people know that Arizona and Hawaii are the only states that do not observe daylight savings time. But it's not that simple in Arizona. There are parts of the state that do observe daylight savings time. Navajo Nation, which covers a substantial part of Arizona in the northeast, observes daylight savings, falling in line with most of the rest of the U.S. But there is one more catch. One reservation within the Navajo Nation, the Hopi Reservation, has decided not to observe daylight savings.
That's just bloody confusing. We don't have daylight saving in Queensland. We have too much sun. If you want some sun, take it from us. We don't need it. That's confusing. That's too much.
That means if you're driving through northeastern Arizona at the right time of year, the local time could change twice in just a couple of hours. Fact 14. 9 states have more cows than people. America, land of the cows. The cattle and beef industry is huge in a lot of U.S. states like Montana, so huge that the state actually has more cows than people, at a ratio of about 2 to 1. Granted, Montana isn't exactly the most heavily populated state in the Union, but still it's home to 2.1 million cows and only 1 million people. South Dakota has the highest ratio of cows to people, with 3.5 million cows to almost 890,000 people, a 4 to 1 ratio. Nebraska, North Dakota, Wyoming, Kansas, Idaho, Oklahoma, and Iowa all round out the rest of the states with more audible moos than English words. Fact 13. Kentucky has the world's longest cave system. Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky is home to the longest cave system in the world. Though tourists can only visit about 10 miles of caves on tours, approximately 426 miles of the cave system have been mapped out and explored to date, though researchers keep finding more. Mammoth absolutely
Oh my God, how much cave system are under Kentucky?
dwarfs the second longest cave system on Earth, Oxbelha, an almost 310-mile-long underwater cave system in the Yucatan Peninsula. Fact 12. Utah is home to the largest living organism by mass on Earth. In Utah, you'll find a rather unassuming aspen grove nicknamed Pando, the trembling giant. While it might seem like just another wooded area, it's actually an incredibly unique place. Pando is the largest living organism on Earth. The grove is 80,000.
Technically, by mass, yes. Obviously, the Great Barrier Reef is bigger, but it's obviously not as heavy. But okay.
1,000 years old, and all of the 47,000 genetically identical trees here are actually connected via a single root system. Unfortunately, experts believe Pando is currently dying, as new trees aren't regenerating like they should. They place most of the blame on cattle and mule deer that eat saplings before they can develop. Fact 11. California does not have a higher population than Canada. It's often repeated as a cool geography fact that California has more residents than Canada, the second largest country in the world by area. However, that fact reversed very, very recently, something that hadn't happened since the 1980s. Thanks partly to a surge in immigration, Canada's population has passed 40 million people as of June 2023, while California remains just under 39 million people statewide. So far,
come on. It's like 1 million people. It's not very. It's obviously not right, but it's bloody close.
Canada is continuing to experience record population growth, with some experts believing Canada will have a population of 50 million people by 2043. Fact 10, the Statue of Liberty is in New Jersey and New York. The Statue of Liberty is the famous statue that welcomed immigrants to Ellis Island, their first site of America. It's one of the most recognizable symbols of New York, except it's actually in New Jersey, maybe. Well, both states claim it. The truth is somewhat complicated. Lady Liberty sits on Liberty Island, which is owned by the federal government, probably because they'd had enough of New York and New Jersey fighting over it. However, the island is still considered an exclave of New York, but it is completely surrounded by New Jersey's waters. It remains a great argument starter if you're ever in the tri-state area. Fact 9. The U.S. border with Canada is the longest in the world. The U.S.-Canada border is the longest border in the world between two countries. Not only that, but it's also the longest non-militarized border in the world, as the two countries are allies with friendly relations. The length of the border is just over 5,500 miles, which includes both the border between the contiguous U.S. states and Canada, as well as the northwestern border between Canada and Alaska. Fact 8. The Great Lakes have over...
It's funny because obviously living in Australia, which is the biggest island, obviously continent as well, we don't have any kind of countries butting up against us, you know. Even Tasmania, the island down south, is completely, you know, no countries butting up against it. It's kind of a weird place. You know, you hear people, oh, yeah, I'm driving to this other country. It's like, okay, we can't, you know. Yeah, it's obviously, you know, the US has got Canada up the top and Mexico down the bottom. It's, yeah, you forget sometimes countries are that close, you know. Living in Australia, it's very different. Very, very different.
For 20% of the world's fresh water. The Great Lakes truly live up to their name, as these massive bodies of water are so huge that they hold 20% of the world's entire fresh water supply, excluding water trapped in glaciers. If you're wondering how much 20% of the world's fresh water supply is, it's approximately 6 quadrillion gallons of water. Fact 7. The U.S. is home to most of the world's tornadoes. America loves to think of itself as exceptional, and in some ways it definitely is. Unfortunately, one of those exceptional facts is that frequent deadly tornadoes are almost entirely a uniquely American phenomenon. The U.S. experiences over 1,200 tornadoes a year, and it tends to get much more violent tornadoes than the rest of the world. And that's because of the country's geography. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico gets pulled up toward the center of the U.S. and clashes with dry air coming down from the Rocky Mountains or drifting east from the southwestern desert. Two fronts then clash over the Midwestern states and Texas, creating perfect conditions for tornadoes. Fact 6.
We've done a few reaction videos to tornadoes in America. Horrifying. We have a lot of scary things in Australia, but tornadoes, oh, they're terrifying.
Part of North Carolina still belongs to the UK. Ocracoke Island, located on the outer banks of North Carolina, is partly UK soil. So what happened? Did the Revolutionary War not reach the Outer Banks? Well, it turns out the land that belongs to the UK is kept as a memorial to a group of brave soldiers. Back during World War II, the US had no effective anti-submarine patrol, and German U-boats would hang out off of the East Coast. The British Royal Navy sent 24 ships to help protect its ally. One of them, the HMS Bedfordshire, was sunk by a German torpedo. Locals buried some of the soldiers that washed up on shore. Eventually, the land was permanently leased to the UK's War Grave Commission, so the men buried there could be laid to rest on British soil. Fact 5.
I guess that's nice. You know, a little bit, you know, there's the same in France as well. Same in Gallipoli for Australians. That's nice. Nice thing to do.
18 states can fit into Alaska. Here we go again with the U.S.'s wackiest state. Alaska is, as we explained, and as many lost explorers and hunters have unfortunately had to discover, huge. So big, in fact, that it can fit 19 separate U.S. states within its borders at the same time. Now, we're not just talking about tiny states like Delaware. Big states like New York and Florida are crammed in there as well. Alaska can fit Florida, Connecticut, Delaware, and Indiana. Throw in Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, and Massachusetts. Then you can add New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania. Let's not forget about Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, Vermont, Virginia, and West Virginia, and then still have some room for dessert.
Oh my God. That's a lot of states in Alaska. That's a big state. When you think about it, Western Australia in Australia, obviously, can fit Alaska and Texas within Western Australia. That's how big Western Australia is. But man, that's a lot of states in Alaska. Dang.
Fact
Okay.
4. If you walk south of Detroit, there's a way you can enter Canada. There's a part of Canada that dips down below Detroit. It's really easy to get there. All you have to do is take a tunnel from Detroit to Windsor, Canada, imaginatively named the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel. The tunnel's only about a mile long. You'll have to get your passport checked, though. Fact 3.
Dang,
New Orleans
okay.
used to be above sea level. Louisiana is famous for its jazz, its beignets, its hearty cuisine, and the fact that a lot of it is susceptible to being underwater. However, this wasn't always the case. In fact, New Orleans used to be squarely above sea level, but human intervention has changed that. From the 1700s onward, people erected levees to prevent springtime flooding. Good for them in the short term, but in the long term it caused the soil to subside lower and lower.
Yikes.
Then drainage systems were installed to divert the frequent stormwater that plagued the New Orleans area. Unfortunately, it greatly accelerated the process of subsidence, causing the city and the surrounding areas to sink lower and lower. Today, around 49% of Louisiana is
Wow.
below sea level as a result. But
49%. That's a lot below sea level.
there's an even crazier fact coming up soon.
Oh.
Fact 2. The water in Lake Tahoe would easily cover all of California. Lake Tahoe is one of the most beautiful destinations in California. It's popular all year round for skiing and snowboarding in the nearby mountains in winter and water sports on the crystal clear lake in the summer. But the lake is also pretty deep. Deeper than most people imagine. Lake Tahoe has 37 trillion gallons of water within it. That means if the lake were
Yikes.
emptied out, it would not only cover the entire state of California, but actually submerge it under 14 inches of water. Fact 1.
Wow.
The U.S. is home to 3 supervolcanoes. Here it is, one of the most jaw-dropping and slightly scary geography facts about the U.S. The USA is home to 3 different supervolcanoes.
The only one I know of is Yellowstone. That's the only one I've ever heard of.
A category of volcano so powerful, it's capable of ejecting more than 240 cubic miles of ash, lava, and everything else that erupts out of a volcano. In comparison, the average volcanic eruption is thousands of times smaller, with a volcanic explosivity index, or VEI, of 3. This means that an eruption
Yikes.
produces around 0.02 cubic miles of material. Historic volcanic eruptions, like the 1991 eruption of Pinatubo in the Philippines, clocked in at around VEI of 6 or 2.4 cubic miles of material. So a VEI 8, the capacity of a supervolcano, would be absolutely unimaginable. The 3 supervolcanoes in the U.S. are in Valles Caldera in northern New Mexico,
Oh.
Long Valley Caldera in eastern California, and Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone is
Okay.
thought to be the most capable of damage. The good news is the supervolcano at Yellowstone only erupts about once every 750,000 years. The not-so-good news is the last eruption was 640,000 years ago. Sleep tight. Did you know these crazy U.S. geography facts? Let us know your favorite in the comments below. Now go check out 50 insane facts about ancient Egypt or this video instead.
So that was an interesting video. Only very, very few of them that I've actually heard of. I've never heard of Devil's Canyon. Never knew about the miles and miles of caverns under Kentucky. It's just, some of them are mind-blowing. It's just, America is obviously such a big country as well. The US is such a big country. It's just so many things that we're just still finding out about it as well too. But yeah, some of them are like, you got to drive through Canada to get to that other part of America. But I guess you got to drive through Canada to get to Alaska anyway. You know, so okay. So there's some parts you got to drive through Canada anyway to get to America. Yeah, it's just a weird, that border kind of weird. You know, there's some bits of Canada that dips right into the US as well. It's just, it's a mess. It's a mess up there. But very interesting facts. Very, very interesting. Let me know if you knew some of them. Let me know if there's something in that surprised you a lot. So guys, thank you very much for joining me today. Make sure you stay safe, and I'll definitely see you in the next reaction video. Oh, you're still here? You want more content? Why don't you check out my Patreon down here? You'll get plenty more content and some exclusive videos over there too. If not, why not check out this one over here?